Well, hey, folks. Hope everybody's doing well. Open Pagan Church every Sunday. Well, every Sunday we can, right here. We do live on Facebook. Those of you that are watching the pre recorded version on like YouTube and stuff like that, Pinterest. Can't say Stumbler anymore. Stumbler don't stumble no more. They closed the stupid page. Yeah, kind of hacked me off. But if you're watching on YouTube, click like, click subscribe. What is it they say? Click the bell so that you get a notification of the pre-recordings. If you want to watch them live, we don't simulcast. Been there, tried that. Didn't work too well. Yeah. Topic for today is dyslexia. Well, I entitled it Dyslexic Pagan. Just to kind of get an eyebrow raise on some, I guess. Dyslexia has nothing to do with paganism. Dyslexia is, well, not something you can catch. It's not something you can get from someone else. They call dyslexia a disease. I do have some link pages in the description up in the topic. Feel free to check them out. And dyslexia is very dear and close to my heart because, well, any of you that know me that have tried reading my rhetoric writing, you can tell. I'm gotten better through the years thanks to spell check and different spell check programs and what have you. But I wanted to talk about dyslexia and dyslexic this morning because it's a very misunderstood issue. And like I say, they call it a disease, but it's not actually a disease, as it were. It's more of an affliction or an issue or a problem with how the brain processes the data that comes in through the eyes. And the the thing that I wanted to show you, I did pull up some pages that I'm going to be showing you because there's highlights that you need to understand. And yes, I'm doing about 9 things at once here. What I'm doing is pulling up those pages so that we can take a look at them. I put a couple of 2 or 3 in the description, right? And but I want to actually cover some of the highlights on these pages, right? So, what do you think are, have any of you ever been diagnosed with dyslexic or dyslexia, right? Some people have been perhaps misdiagnosed with dyslexic or dyslexia because you have retina issues or cornea issues that causes focus to be a problem. I never had to wear glasses until I was in my late 20s, early 30s. They tried to prescribe different glasses for me, but back in the 70s and 80s, there were no glasses for dyslexia, and there still really isn't. As I got older and I decided it needed a little bit more magnification, I found that if I could find them, therein lies the problem, slightly red and slightly green tinted glasses. Yes, slightly red and slightly green tinted glasses. One eye would be slightly red and one eye would be slightly green. That it did help with the color variables and the shadows that happen on those of us that are dyslexic. Now, if you miss any of this, I have a strong recommendation. You rewind just a little bit because it may seem I'm talking a bit fast. Now, here's something else that a lot of people don't realize about dyslexia. Dyslexic does not only affect the eyes. Now, listen to this real close because a lot of people don't realize this, and I've been studying this ever since I first heard the term when I was like 12 or 13 years old. And I'm like a little older now. Sometimes I'm a bit wiser. It depends on what mood I'm in. But dyslexic also affects how you hear things. Now, it's not so much that you hear the tapping on the microphone, but it's how you hear certain words and syllables. And it's not so much even how you hear them, but how your mind processes them. Now, before I flip over to these pages and we start looking at the medical nuances of it, yes, Debbie says it's a neurological condition. Yes, it is to a degree, absolutely. But it's a neurological condition that not only affects the eyes, but it also affects the way your brain processes the things that you hear. Now, yes, I now wear hearing aids, and those hearing aids have helped a lot because my audiologist understands that I have dyslexia. So she has been able to adjust the left and the right ear and back and forth accordingly until we got it so that the things that I was hearing people say, my brain was actually processing it correctly. And one of the tests that she gave me was she gave me a string of numbers. Now, this is the part that I want you to listen to real close. Your brain can process so much amazing data around you all of the time. And being a computer engineer, I understand how computers process data, which has helped me understand how the old bean up here processes data. If someone looks at you and tells you 65, 42, 88, 29. 65, 42, 88, 29. Now, if you were to try to write that down while I was saying it, the chances are you will reverse 2 or 3 or 4 numbers. You may be like, Don, how the hell can you reverse 3 numbers? Well, it's easy. Okay? And here's the interesting part. If I was to try to remember the numbers that I just gave you, that would be impossible for me to do because in my mind, it has already started jumbling those numbers around. I could not in the least way tell you the numbers I just told you. And you don't have to be a smartass and post them in the chat. I bet you somebody's already typing. Don't bother, it's not the point. The point is how you hear things, how you perceive things, your perception of not only what you see, but what you hear. Excuse me. Now a bit of history real quick. I graduated high school in 1981. Between 1981 and 1994, I went to three different schools. Um, Lee College, NRI, which is a computer school, and then I attended a course online for about 6 weeks or so that was supposedly to help you through dyslexia. It was a joke because what they wanted me to do was sit and study numbers. And through studying numbers, it would help condition my mind to be able to remember those numbers. There's a problem with that. The longer I look at numbers, the more the damn things start to move around the page or go in and out of focus, right? Or the more the colors on the page would change. Now, I don't know if this is going to sound familiar to any of you, but the more I read, the sleepier I get, till eventually I would just pass out. And the more I read, the less I remember from the paragraph before. Yeah, the more I read, the less I remember from the paragraph before. Now, one of the interesting things about dyslexic is there are no two dyslexics affected the same exact way. Here is what makes dyslexia such a problem. There are basics. There are basics in which you can kind of look at. We're going to highlight some here in a little bit over on these web pages. And one of the pages is named Dyslexia and Creativity. And one of the things that they found, I've got both how to find it in children and how to find it and deal with it in adults. And you're going to find that you see this more than you think. They have some ideas about what causes dyslexic, but they can't prove it. How do you deal with it? How do you live with it? I'm going to talk about that later. But a real quick history. I did a job fair with a counselor when I was a senior in high school. They put me through all of these. Now, this is 1981, okay, so kind of get an idea of the time span. They put me through 4 hours of test. Tick. One of the things that I have found, all dyslexics have test apnea. Every dyslexic that I have ever met my entire life has test apnea. Now, understand, just because you have test apnea doesn't mean you're dyslexic. And I have no scientific data to say that just because you're dyslexic, you're going to have test apnea. Okay? I'm just saying I have never met a dyslexic that didn't have test apnea. What the hell is test apnea? It's where you know the material, right? You know the material, and you sit down to that test and your brain goes wipe. No idea what the hell you're doing there. You're looking at those words and they're dancing around on the page. The words start to dance a jig and your brain goes, bing, I don't remember nothing. So, how do we get around it? Well, continuing on with that little bit of history, I worked in the automotive parts retail from 1979 to 1981. I got out of it, went into the oil field for a few years, and well, That's what I got out of the oil field. Ding, 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 ding. In 82, I left the oil field and did odd jobs here and there. Ended up back in the auto parts about 83, 84. Now you're probably thinking, auto parts has absolutely nothing to do with anything but numbers. Auto parts are put on a shelf in alphanumeric sequences. The catalogs that we had back then, we didn't have the computers that the auto parts do today, where they can type in the year, make, and the model and locate what it is you're looking for. No. We had catalog racks that were stacked 3 deep. They were stacked 3 deep and 4 foot wide, full of books and catalogs from different brand names with text and writing less than a number 8 font. Speaking in computer term, if you know what a number 8 font, it's small. But I worked in the auto parts from 83, 84 all the way up to 1994. I built racing engines, drove race cars. Anybody that understands mechanics is like, Don, if you're dyslexic, how the hell did you build a motor without understanding the specs? Well, I'm going to talk about that in a bit. I'm going to talk about some ways that, luckily, friends and bosses that I had at the time helped me get around dyslexic. Some of them told me, dude, have you ever heard of the term dyslexic? Yeah, I have, and I'm rather embarrassed about it. That's because back in the 70s and 80s, kids who were diagnosed with dyslexic, it was tagged up there with laziness and couldn't be bothered to actually do the work. Because they assumed that dyslexic people are lazy. Quite the contrary. Most dyslexic people are very heavy workers. They're very mechanically oriented, and they're very detail oriented. So then in the late 80s, early 90s, I got involved in computers. Ooh, dyslexic in computers. Ooh. Well, I knew real quick I was not a programmer. Could you imagine, just for a moment, a dyslexic trying to write a program? The joke is it would run upside down and backwards. But no. Here's the interesting part. I can read code. I can scan through code and tell you if I see an error in that code. But I cannot take a blank page and write code or HTML. HTML web design is code. Boy, is it code. I studied it in university. Yes. I graduated Kaplan University with a 3.89 GPA in computer science. How did I do that? I had a lot of help with English, math, some of the class prerequisites, or some of the classes that I had to take were coding and database. So, with the help of the folks here at the house, and with the help of my programmer buddies that I was in class with, I helped them with their networking, and they helped me with my programming. So those of you that are dyslexic, do not believe the career counselor when she tells you or when he tells you, like they did me after 4 hours of testing, I'm sorry, Mr. Maxwell, but according to our evaluations and findings, the only job we will ever be able to find for you will either be oil fill or ditch digger. I said, well, what about construction? I'm good with construction. I'm good with wood. You can't read a tape, a measuring tape. Sure I can. I just take a little longer. And by the time that woman got through with me, my self-esteem was about the size of a pea. So what I want to tell you guys, don't let people tell you you can't. There are things that you may not be able to do. You will not find books in my office that are not stuck in the bottom of a drawer. Been there, done that, got the headache, didn't work. But I can still design an IP address schema, a network, an infrastructure, a security basis, set up a router, configure a router from zero, build a server from nothing, and load one of 4 different operating systems on it and configure it to do different things within a network. How? Self-taught. Self-taught. Ask questions. Watch a lot of videos. Find reading software or use the dyslexia.yale.edu. Anyway, there are places out there where you can get software for your computer that will read to you. Put your headphones on, adjust the reading so that it works for you. And like I said, remember, dyslexia doesn't just affect the eyes. Dyslexia affects the way we interpret what we hear. We may actually hear the sound. We may actually hear the tones. But the brain doesn't actually comprehend it the way others would think. Dyslexia people are generally very smart mechanically. They can look at things and rationalize the way they work, how they operate, how they function. Most dyslexics, they may not know how to build a shelf, but they can look at a wall, a blank wall, and tell you what that wall would look like with a bookshelf on it or a wall ornament or something like that. But if you tell us you're going to paint the wall a certain color, nope, can't see it, can't visualize it, don't have a clue. And there's a story I could tell you about our dining room down in Liberty when the wife decided she was going to paint it yellow. Yellow. Couldn't do it. Could not picture it. The only thing I could do was go, ew. Okay, fine. You want it yellow? I'll paint the damn thing yellow. Pick out the color, I'll paint it. No problem. We got done. We got the trim done. Got the trim done, got the pictures on the wall, the table back in there, got everything set up. And I stood back and looked at it and I said, well, damn. That looks good. Dyslexics have a different mode of perception than a lot of people. I've learned this since I really started paying attention to it when I was in my late teens and early 20s. I didn't perceive things the way others do. I didn't rationalize the world around me the way I hate to use this term, but the way normal people do. I had a different perception of the world around me. So what do you think? If you're watching live, what are some of the things that you might perceive you as dyslexic? Maybe you don't know, and that's okay. Because what I'd like to flip to now is we're 5 minutes before the hour. Let's take just a moment. This is our topic for the day is dyslexia. And some of the best ways to really deal with it. Many of which are my own perceptions, my own experience in dealing with it. Others may need to deal with it a little differently. I will tell you this. It's not something that can be healed because it's not really a disease by the term of disease. It's more of an affliction than a disease. It's like Debbie said, it's a neurological condition where your brain perceives things differently than what some others might. Dyslexics might suck in math, but we're okay in arithmetic. Add, subtract, multiply. Add, subtract, and multiply I am really good with. Divide, division, nope. I suck in division. And if the numbers get too long, not going to happen. And if I have to write it down, I mean, my daughter looks at me on occasion with a tilted head going, how'd you do that in your head? I can work the numbers in my head all day long. If I have to write them down, I'm screwed. So, take just a minute. If you got to get up and go for a pause for the calls, that's fine. Go ahead. I'm going to pull up a couple of these pages and highlight a couple of things for you. And let's see what we can see, shall we? Here we go. So, the first page I want to look at, and by the way, the link to this page is in the description. All of the links to all of the pages is in the description. But here's where it tells you what is dyslexia. Well, here's where it says, and I was very glad to see this, okay? Brains connect letters to sounds. And then they have to put the sounds in the right order, thereby giving credence to what I was saying, that not only does dyslexia affect the eyes and the perception of the way the brain processes what the eyes see, but also what the ears hear. And this sentence right here really makes a lot of sense. And if you can't see it, let me bring it up a bit for you. People with dyslexia have trouble matching the letters they see on the page with the sounds those letters and combinations of letters make. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Now, you might be saying, well, Don, you say you're dyslexic. You say you're dyslexic, but how can you read that page aloud? That's one of the ways I learned to work with dyslexia. Here is my key to being able to read certain things aloud. Ready? Oh, it's difficult. It's really difficult. If I know I'm going to be reading bits and pieces of something aloud, I've already read it to myself in a nice slow read, that somewhere in my brain it remembers some of the words on the page, and I can go back and pick out certain areas of that page and I can read it aloud. Now, if I just had to flip over to that page and start reading aloud, no, I'd sound like a fourth or fifth grader trying to read from a book for the first time because it takes longer for a dyslexic brain to process what it's reading, see the word that it's reading, put it to the mouth, and send it out of the mouth. Right? So if we talk about some of the ways, and this is a real good page because it really actually gives you the history of it. And this is more to do with how to find the dyslexia at an early age in children. But I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here because a lot of us that are watching these pre-recorded videos are going to be adults or young adults. This is the part that I really want to bring to heart. This is from Mayo Clinic. MayoClinic.org talks about diseases and conditions, dyslexia symptoms and causes. Some of this, as someone that lives with dyslexia, I agree. Some of it, as someone that lives with dyslexia, I do not. However, this section here, it's a couple of inches down the page. Some of the signs in young children: late talking. They were late being able to form words. Learning new words slowly. And other issues: difficulty learning nursery rhymes or playing rhymes and games, rhyming games. School-age children, I really like some of the symptoms that they give here for school-age children. And I really like that they tagged occasionally hearing. Similarities and differences between numbers, between numbers and letters. That's one of the things I was telling you earlier. Teens and adults and young adults. Now let me tell you. You guys can go read these pages and check them out. In fact, if you have young children, I strongly recommend that you do check these pages out. And if you're an adult that may actually exhibit any of these signs, trouble reading, you get a headache when reading, you definitely want to get your eyes checked out. If you have trouble processing certain words and certain syllables that people are talking about, definitely go get your hearing checked out. Now, some of the keys and tricks, right? Some of the keys and tricks that might help you that I've learned through the years of dealing with dyslexic. One, slow down. When you're reading something, slow down. You're not trying to speed read, you don't have to speed read, and you're not trying to impress anyone. And here's the trick that one of my old bosses in the auto parts told me. His name was Ted. I swear he was older than the hills then, and this was 84, 85. He had served 2 tours in the war. And the way he taught me to deal with it, of course, understand, in the auto parts, all we dealt with was reading and numbers. The way he taught me to deal with it was to slow down. Look at the number, or look at the words, look up, give yourself just a second and look at it again and see if you see the same thing twice. Now here's another thing about dyslexic. You might see 4598. Okay? You might see 4598, but you might write down 8459 or 8945 or any number variants of sequences therein. So what he taught me to do is I walked around with scrap paper. Man, let me tell you, I walked around with a notebook of scrap paper all the time and a pen. Not a pencil, but a pen. It's harder for dyslexics to read pencil than it is for us to read pen. Is it color? Is it sharpness of the letters or numbers? I don't know. But it is easier for a dyslexic to read pen or type than it is to read written things with a pencil, especially a quill. The ancient quills, you can almost forget us reading it at all. Cursive, forget it. Somebody gives me a letter written in cursive, I'm turning it every way but right, trying to figure out what the hell it is they're talking about. But this is a memory stick out of a laptop. And you'll notice that I have to turn it slightly down and slightly sideways to be able to see the specifications on the memory stick. Light is a necessity when you're reading as a dyslexic. It doesn't need to be really, really bright white light, but a light of your choosing. Some people like slightly amber, some people like a slightly red tint to their light, some a blue, some green. But that memory stick has little bitty, tiny, itty bitty letters and numbers on it. The way I've learned to read those is to turn it slightly one way or the other until my eyes can focus on the numbers. Write it down. That's the key. Right? Looking away, looking at it again. Write down the number you saw the first time. Okay? Look away for just a second, look at it again. Write the number down you saw the second time. If you get it 2 out of 2, the chances are you're about 90% correct. I'll say that again. If you looked at the number and you wrote it down the first time, irregardless of how long it is, and you look at the number the second time and you write it down, if it's exactly correct to the first time you write it down, you're about a 90% accuracy rate that you got the number right. But if the 2 numbers don't match, look at it a third time and take the best 2 out of 3. I've seen times where I may have all 3 of the damn things wrong. I write it a 4th time. That's what I mean by slow down. The fourth time you write it down, if the damn thing is still wrong, don't go beat your head against a wall. Break the number up in sequences. If it's a 10-digit number, break it up in threes or fours. Break it up in twos. If you have to, look at that number. I don't see a number. There's a number at the end of the web page. So 20353552 is at the end of that last web page I showed you, right? So what I would do is, if that was a number I needed to go back and pull apart for, or if I needed to go find that number somewhere, I would write it down, right? I would write down 203 535 52. I automatically now, at 56 years old, I automatically now break it up. It's something I've taught myself to do throughout the years. You break it up. How does that work with reading a book, you say? Well, I have three books. Three book series that are my most favorite book of all time, right? The Dark Jewel trilogies, The Keys of Life, and of course, the Outlander series, right? Now, the Outlander series, I listened to all of the books on audio. I was not fixing to try to read the damn thing. I knew better. I wanted to remember the Outlander series, so I listened to the books on audio. The Key of Life series, the first set I bought in print because I wanted to be able to loan them out to people that could and enjoy reading. Lost them. Somebody borrowed them and never returned the damn things, but there you go. But when I got the Key of Life on audio, I heard things in that unabridged reading that I did not remember seeing in the book. It just didn't work. And I set out to challenge myself with the Dark Jewel trilogies, right? I was loaned the really thick Dark Jewel trilogies book that had all three books in one. I set out to challenge myself. I was going to read that damn thing, and I was going to read it from cover to cover if it took me 20 years to do. It took me a year to read that book. Took me a year to read that damn thing. And it really pissed me off because I could not tell you what I read on this page, what was on the page before. I did remember key points in the book. I remembered my perception of the meaning of the book and certain characters that perform certain acts in the book. But even better than 10 years later, I can't tell you what was in the damn book, and I read the whole thing cover to cover. I ended up getting the book on audio. Yep. The Dragon Riders of Pern I also got on audio. I have an entire library of audio books that I have amassed through the years. They're on the server. I can download them and listen to them wherever I want. My students, people that I teach and train, I tell them, when you send me an email of your diary or your journal, send it to me one paragraph at a time. Because if it's more than a single paragraph, I'm not going to bother. Delete. I tell people beforehand, if you're going to send me what you have going on so that I can maybe help you get through it or help you get around it as a pagan minister, send it to me a paragraph at a time. Because if you send me a whole damn long book, I'm not even going to bother. Delete. I'm not going to put myself through that. Now, I can see it right now. Facebook has not been auto-scrolling again, and I just realized there's been a whole conversation going on. Right. So, yes. Um, if you type something in there and I seem to ignore it, I promise I wasn't ignoring it. Facebook was not auto-scrolling again. Damn it. Anyway, I'd like to end our broadcast with this, though, in all seriousness. Really. As a pagan minister and as a shaman of a grove, okay, I have always found it best, the best ways for dyslexic to learn is ask questions, slow down, and listen. Now, here's something that I need you to understand. Not everyone, and please listen to this real close, not everyone is full-blown dyslexic. Not everyone has a diagnosable full-blown dyslexic issue. There are people out there that have carried dyslexia through the family line. Certain parts of dyslexia is considered to be hereditary. You may have children or you may yourself have issues with the way you comprehend or you interpret what you hear, but your eyesight is perfect. You can sit down and read an entire book and retain the whole thing. But when someone talks to you or you watch a video or a training video, you just don't get it. The interpretation of what you're hearing just doesn't make any sense. On the flip side, you may hear perfectly fine, never had any problems interpreting what people say, but yet you have issues interpreting what you see in the written, in the alphanumeric world. So when you are dealing with dyslexic and you're dealing with dyslexia, it does and can and will affect your spirituality. It will. I know this firsthand. Dyslexic people, don't give up. I'm telling you, don't give up. Those of us in the older generation that dealt with dyslexic as a child or a young adult, we were told you're lazy. We were told you'll never amount to anything. We were told don't bother doing that. You'll never make it. I was told not to get into electronics. I was told I would never make it as a computer technician. I was told I would never be anything but a ditch digger, an oil field worker. I was told don't even go to work in construction. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you that my tenacity, my hard-headedness won out. I can build a house from ground up. I can go all the way through the trim. I hate trim. I hate putting up molding and I hate putting up trim, but I can do it. I can build a shelf, I can build a kitchen, I can plumb, I can do electrical, run wires. I ran all of the wires for my office. Hadn't burnt down yet. I've hooked up the entire infrastructure here in the house for the network. You can do it. You just have you have to find what's right for you. You have to do what's right for you with a dyslexic mind and the way we perceive things and the way we go about things. The first thing you have to understand is slow down. Slow down just a bit. Don't become so needle point focused on what you're working on that you become blind in what you see. If you look at something and it doesn't look right, look at it again. Look away from it for a second and look at it again. You can do this. And like I say, the reason I wanted to cover dyslexia and paganism, because I have had a number of people come to me through the years that because they had reading comprehension issues, because they had writing composition issues, because they have problems maybe hearing or interpreting exactly what people are saying, I've had people come to me and say, why bother? You know, why bother studying anything? Your spirituality is in your heart. It's not in a book. It's not in a Bible. It's not in the words of a preacher. Your spirituality is not even in the words of this old pagan minister. I give you ideas. I interpret the way I see things. If my interpretations might happen to meet or agree with the way your interpretations go, sweet, rock on. When you're working on things on the computer and you're trying to read something that you just don't understand, here comes the last and final part of dyslexics that really make you quit. It will make you quit. It'll make you quit jobs. It'll make you quit families. It'll make you quit life. It'll make you just, why the hell bother? Dyslexics typically have a bad temper. And it's a conditioned temper. It's a temper that says, why the hell bother? I'm going to fail anyway. I can't read that book anyway. Why should I try to learn it? I can't learn that path anyway because I can't read the books and things that everybody has out. That's when you locate yourself a teacher, locate someone that understands, and say, I am dyslexic. I have trouble with reading comprehension. Can you teach me without giving me a pile ass of books to read? That is how dyslexic affects your spirituality. I have managed to muddle through, get reading software, have the computer read to me, and you want to talk about the most boring thing in the world I ever listened to in my life was the Councils of Nicaea. I had reading software and I sit and listened to the Councils of Nicaea for hours. I wanted to cut my throat, but it was well worth it. find that reading software. Find that thing that works for you. And my dyslexic friends, don't give up. Keep up the good fight. Don't get angry. Don't give up. When you find you have reading comprehension issues, troubles with math or arithmetic, you don't have to have full-blown dyslexic to have trouble with add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Your brain may just not interpret things the way everybody else does. Look at the website. Take some of the different tests that they offer and go through and ask your family members to help you find out or figure out whether or not you're dyslexic or if you're just in too big a damn hurry. As always, thank you very much for watching Open Pagan Church. And we'll see you next week, hopefully with another mind-opening or a mind-boggling topic. Enjoy your week. Have a great day. Thank you for watching.